Alrighty folks, I'm Sharky, this is Fiona. Thank you for joining us today on Zero Cost Gardening. Today we have a very exciting episode for you. We're basically going to be building a raised bed garden from start to finish, giving you all the information that you need to do it yourself in your own yard. While we do this, we're going to be adhering to the fundamentals of zero cost gardening, which the first thing you need to know about that is that zero cost gardening is a lie. Sorry, we lied. It's not free. There is a cost to it. You do have to buy some things. You can be an extremist. You can go totally off grid, and you can make it happen, not spending one single dollar. But we do. Sometimes we run to the store and we buy supplies that we need. However, we keep it as absolutely as cheap as we possibly can. I went to Lowe's with a calculator. Home Depot would have been the same. Walmart would have been a little bit cheaper. But I added up all the supplies you would need to create a raised bed garden, a 12-inch raised bed garden that's 16 feet by about 4 feet, and it would cost $327 using the items they would recommend. What we're going to do today costs about 65 bucks. So not zero cost, but that's why we have the audacity to use that name. The real reason we use that name is because what we're really about is having zero negative effect on the environment, zero cost on the environment. We don't use products that are harmful for Mother Nature. We don't use synthetic, we don't use man-made fertilizers, we don't use products that are harvested in a way that hurts the ozone. We try to use as many native species as we can. We try to encourage birds and beneficial insects to do the work that pesticides would normally do, and it works. That way we don't use pesticides, we don't use harmful fertilizers, and we get amazing results. So that's another reason, the real reason why we call ourselves Zero Cost Gardening. Basically, let's get into the video. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoy the video, or as my Aunt Patty from New Jersey would say, hope you dig it, because we're rooting for you. Was that funny? Was that funny, Fiona? It was funny. Enjoy the video. Alright, now it's time to start building our layers. So building the layers is not a science. There's no formula. You can do whatever you want, whatever resources, whatever materials you have, use that to build your layers. Don't follow a recipe online that says you need 1 layer chicken manure, you need pterodactyl poop. Like, forget it. Whatever you have is going to build you better soil than if you go to the store and spend $8 to $12 on 1 cubic yard of pre-made potting soil that's got a ton of salt in it and fertilizers that only last a couple weeks or months. Anyway, we're going to start with cardboard. Cardboard, one of the greatest things you put in your garden. And once a week, all of my neighbors, they put it out at the curb just for me. So I drive around with Fiona, the farm pup, and we steal people's garbage every Tuesday night. If you're my neighbor, that's what's been happening. Sorry if it's weirding you out, please don't shoot me. You can find free cardboard. There's so many places to get it. Just be creative. Check a Google search in your area. So the rule about cardboard is the perfect cardboard looks like this. It's brown, a little bit of print on it. That's okay. That's not so bad. Kind of the not so perfect looks like this. You don't love cardboard with a lot of print on it. This one also has a little bit of a glossy surface. That has chemicals to make it shiny and partially reflective. We don't necessarily want those in the garden. It's I've used it a lot. I haven't had any problems. It hasn't poisoned any plants or killed any worms, but all the books and resources say avoid that stuff. The other thing about cardboard is you definitely want to look over your cardboard and make sure there's no plastic on it anywhere. Some labels that have an address, if you get an Amazon package, they actually have plastic built into the label to make it a little waterproof. So some of those labels you got to take off, and of course any tape. You got to take all the tape off. Now what I do with my cardboard is I leave it outside someplace where it gets a little bit of water when it rains. So a lot of the cardboard we're using today is already broken down a little bit. This is an awesome piece of cardboard. It's already half broken down. It's got nothing but paper tape on it that has a water-soluble glue that worms seem to love. And this is ready to go. This is going to fall apart and become good, nutritious worm food way quicker than a fresh box. So we love that one. And the way I got it to that state was pretty much just leaving it hidden in a circle of bushes, baking in the sun. So anyway, Fiona and I, we're going to put this first layer on, and that first layer is cardboard. All right, we got our cardboard ready to place now. The only thing to keep in mind when you're placing your cardboard is be sloppy, be messy. This is an art project. This is not science. So if one area is one layer of cardboard and one area is 3 or 4 layers with big thick chunks, that's good. That's what you want. The cardboard serves many purposes in the lasagna or the layered garden. It stops weeds from growing up. It stops roots from growing up into the bed. But mostly for our purposes, the most important thing is it draws in the worms. Worms are the greatest thing you can have in your soil, and this is bait. This is worm bait right here. They love cardboard more than kitchen scraps, more than anything else. Don't know why. A lot of people say maybe it's the glue that they use, but it's perfect for worms. So you want some areas to break down slowly, because then the worms will stay there for 3, 6, 9 months, maybe even longer. You want some areas to break down quickly to give the worms better access, to give more flow of nutrients through the layers and through the soils. So cover 100%, be sloppy, leave some chunks, have fun. This is where, if you have a 6-year-old, get the 6-year-old to do this. So let's get started. Now we're going to give it a nice rinse again. We're going to wet down the whole thing real well. And then we move on to our next layer. All right, this next layer is very important. This is your thick, heavy sticks, logs, and branches layer. It forms the foundation. What this does is this takes a long time to break down. This takes a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years, a log this size to break down, and the whole entire time is continually providing nutrients for your plants planted above. It's providing nutrients for the microscopic bacteria and fungus that you can't even see and never will see. Also, it's retaining moisture. When they start to break down, they act like sponges. So in a bed this size, we're only 12 inches deep. So I'm not going to use a lot of super thick material. In a higher raised bed, something that's 3 feet deep, 4 feet deep, so it's a nice height. You don't have to bend over to work your vegetables. Then you're going to want to use bigger than this. You're going to use thick stuff to put a ton of it in the bottom. It's if you're curious, look up hugelkultur, H-U-G-E-L culture with a K. That'll explain the science behind it. Way better than filling that entire bed up with soil. Way cheaper too. And in the long run, it provides excellent drainage, so you don't have to worry about your roots sitting in water and getting swampy and dead. So we're going to go ahead and fill this layer with sticks and branches, heavy carbon items. Alright, so we liberated a bunch of good pieces of wood and sticks from our neighbors, and the pile, these are obviously too big to use in our garden, so what we're going to do is take a good old handy pair of kitchen shears. Don't underestimate how well these work, because they're great in the garden. They'll take care of anything that you could possibly want to cut. So I don't want to bore you with this part, but I'll come right back as soon as we're done. Well, there you go. Only took about 5 or 6 minutes, and we managed to take this whole pile down into about 8-inch pieces, maybe 12-inch pieces. So don't underestimate the power of kitchen shears. They're not just for cutting up lobster tails. you'd be surprised at the thickness of the stuff they could get through. Like this is pretty thick right here. Those kitchen shears, they went right through it, no problem at all. Alright, so we got our heavy carbon layer placed down, and now it's time to add the next layer. Next layer, we want to do nitrogen. So basically you want to go brown, green, if you can. The browns, remember, are things that when they break down, they're going to turn to dust, like these palm fronds. They'll turn to dust. That makes them carbon rich. Nitrogen is stuff that when it breaks down, it'll turn to slime. So this leaf, for instance, is more nitrogen layer. I left them in here because there's no rules. Nature wants chaos. We're going to give chaos to nature. But the next layer is going to be predominantly nitrogen. I'll show you what we're going to use. All right, now it's time to add some green to our layers. Add something that basically when it breaks down, if it turns slimy, then you know you're in the right place. If it just dries out and turns to dust, that's not this layer. That's a different layer. That's the easy way to define the greens in your compost or in your layered garden. Fiona's going to help us out. She loves this plant because it's an awesome chew toy. This is popcorn cassia. It's actually a senna, common name popcorn cassia. The reason why is because if you crumble up these leaves or smell the flowers, even from a distance, from here I can smell it. You don't have to put it up to your nose. It smells like movie theater buttered popcorn, which is kind of awesome. I love this plant. It's a very aggressive grower and makes a great instant mulch or chop and drop green manure. And not only that, these pretty yellow flowers, they turn into these bean pods. So this is a great plant to share. Easy to grow from seed, and also since it has bean pods, that means there's some nitrogen fixing going on. So it's not only providing you useful mulch, useful green manure, it's also improving your soil just by sitting in it. So we're going to take a bunch of this down, and I'm not worried about it because it'll grow back, and we're going to use that in our lasagna garden, raised bed, whatever you want to call it. All right, we got some nitrogen, popcorn senna, popcorn cassia, whatever you want to call it. We're going to spread that around. Now, if I had it right now, I would love to use grass clippings. That would be my favorite thing to use for this layer. All right, and that's good enough. So for our next layer, we're going to put down a layer of straw, which would be a carbon. So this layer is a brown layer. It's a pretty thin layer actually on top of the nitrogen layer. But this is called coastal hay. Coastal hay is available in the south. I think as far north as Georgia and probably out to Texas and Louisiana. And in the north, I don't know if you'd be able to get this, but find whatever the equivalent is. What makes this special is a full-size bale of coastal hay is about $7.50, maybe $8. If you're paying more than that, you're paying too much, or you're buying the wrong kind of hay. So look for coastal hay, make some phone calls, because the more you use, the better. You can go through a couple bales of this in a season easily, which is nothing if it costs you $30, but if you're getting a better quality imported from Canada feed hay, you're going to pay $30 a bale, and then it gets a little pricey. Anyway, this stuff is awesome. Breaks down quick, aerates, it turns into a really nice humus layer. So this layer is a little bit thin, but it's enough to get carbon on top of that last nitrogen layer. Now let's go ahead and add our next layer. Next layer, we're going back to nitrogen, our most nitrogen rich layer. We're going to use mushroom compost. We're going to lay that down, then we're going to talk about mushroom compost a little bit because it's highly controversial. Woo! mushroom compost layer, which mushroom compost is a little bit controversial. Let me show you up close what it looks like. The reason why it's controversial is because some people tell you it's no good to use in the garden at all. Mostly people are trying to sell you a better, higher quality compost. Fiona likes it. Don't eat that puppy. She thinks it's good enough to eat. But anyway, the thing about the mushroom compost is it starts off like this. It starts off as giant bales of hay the size of a shipping container, gets sent to the mushroom farm, and at the mushroom farm they fill it with nitrogen fertilizers and I think some phosphates and other proprietary secret ingredients, and then they grow mushrooms in it. Now the mushrooms do what fungus does. They break down all of the organic material and they turn it into more mushroom. So then they harvest the mushrooms, and when they harvest the mushrooms and ship them out to Publix or whatever supermarket, what they have left is this compost, but all the nutrients, meanwhile, they're at Publix, according to some people, that they've gone into the mushrooms and there's not much mineral or nutrient value to this. The other side of the argument is here in Central Florida in Zellwood near Apopka, there's Monterey Mushroom Farm. There's a Monterey Mushroom Farm in several states throughout the US, and you can go there and they have literally tons and tons of this stuff they generate, and they need to get rid of it. So for 25 bucks you can get 3 cubic yards, which is a dump truck or a truck bed filled with, for a little bit more money you can get 5 cubic yards or more. So you can fill a dump truck for very, very, very cheap. So even if this doesn't have the greatest intensity of minerals and nutrients, it's an amazing soil builder because it's already broken down in part. It's got great structure to it, and most importantly, it's got the bacteria. It's got anaerobic, mostly aerobic bacteria in it, but it also has some fungal starts. So this is a seed throughout the whole bed, and everything that's alive that's in this compost, this mushroom compost, is going to spread. It's going to grow down, it's going to grow to the left and the right, and it's also going to grow up once we cover it with the next layers. So the mushroom compost controversy is that this is very different than the stuff you would buy in a bag at Lowe's or Home Depot or any big box store. If you get mushroom compost there, it's going to be totally finished, ready to use compost. You can treat it pretty much like soil. This stuff is usually not fully broken down. I've had this in my yard kind of baking in the sun, getting water on a regular basis for about a month and a half right now. So now it's ready to go, but if you get it straight from the farm, sometimes you need to let it break down a little bit before you use it. Right, Fiona? So this next layer that I've already put down is a very thin layer. It's one of my favorite things to add to soil. This is shredded cardboard and maybe a little bit of paper. There might be some shredded paper bags in here as well. But these shredded cardboard, this is awesome for attracting worms. Worms are the best thing you can have in your bed, period. Better than any expensive soil. Now this shredded cardboard is from our kitchen, all of our house waste. If we can shred it, we do. So some of this has the wrong type of cardboard, something that people will tell you don't compost because it has wax built into it. Like if you get a paper bowl that's meant to hold hot liquids, that doesn't break down as quickly because it has kind of a wax lining or some sort of lining. I put that in here anyway, not in a large percent, but it's better going in here than going in a landfill. And I know for a fact that it does break down. The worms will break it down and they will turn it into good soil. God bless you, puppy dog. So we put it in here. This stuff is awesome. This, whatever this packing cardboard is, breaks down super quick. It breaks down into a mushy pulp and it's just perfect, right, Fiona? Isn't it perfect? It's the perfect stuff to break down. Also get a puppy dog, because your puppy dog will help you break it down by chewing it with her teeth. Anyway, so here's a layer of carbon, super thin layer. That's okay, we don't care. Now it's time to add the next nitrogen layer, one of my favorite layers. This is kitchen scraps. Whatever kitchen scraps you got, throw them down. All right, guys, for our next layer, we had to move to puppy dog because the next layer is kitchen scraps. And this is the same stuff you put in a compost pile. We got everything in here. Here's some thyme. Here's a little cantaloupe, some apples, some spaghetti. I know Fiona loves spaghetti, but she doesn't get to have any of this. This is for the worms, for the gardens. So the tips and tricks, the advanced hack for compost is keep a paper bag in your freezer. Every time you get some compost, throw it in there. That way you won't have worms, you won't have flies, you won't have smell in your kitchen. And then when it comes time to use it, I just put it in a bucket and I fill it up with some water. That thaws it out real quick in the Florida sun. So this stuff, such a commodity. You can never have too much of it. You know somebody that works at a restaurant? Go ahead and ask them. Bring some of those kitchen scraps home. It'll turn your garden into magic soil in no time at all. So we're getting towards the end. So this next couple layers are more amendments than actual layers. What we got here is it's azomite, it's rock dust. This is granulated volcanic pumice. This comes from a nursery in DeLand. They're the only people around here I know that sells it encapsulated. You can get rock dust, and it's a very fine dust, which I think is great in most states. But in Florida, when you put that in the soil, it just washes straight down into the sand. So this granulated stuff takes it sticks around longer. So give this a try if you can find it. This you don't want to put too close to the bottom of your layered garden. You want this closer to the top because you want it to wash down. You want it to wash down through every single layer. What this is minerals. There's over 100 minerals in here. So, you know, we're not entirely sure about the benefits of all the different minerals in here. There isn't a lot of scientific evidence out there that proves that rock dust is even worth it. But there's a lot of evidence in people's garden. When people use rock dust, they get tastier vegetables and fruits. They get larger harvests and they're just healthier plants in general. So the rule of thumb is you want to use about ½ a pound to a pound per square foot. And some people say you can use way less than that and it's still very beneficial. Some people want to use 2 or 3 pounds per square foot. If you're doing container gardening, I would recommend 2 or 3 pounds per square foot if you got the rock dust and can afford it. You can't use too much of this stuff. You won't burn your plants. It's not fertilizer. It's just minerals basically, and nutrients that need to be broken down. I think the greatest advantage and benefit from it is that it feeds the microbes more than it feeds the plant. Actually, you can't feed the plant until the microbes break it down first, but you're gonna have a lot of healthy microbes in here. There's already some life left over from one of my layers. Pill bugs are great, you guys. Pill bugs break stuff down. Now our next layer is just this little thin layer. And what this is leaves and kitchen scraps that have been broken down by my worms. This is a layer of vermicompost, and the reason we're putting this in here is because not only does it seed the best types of bacteria, but it also seeds worms right into the bed. We got a number of worms in here. I bet we could find some real tiny ones. This bed that I took this from is not really a harvest bed. It's more of a bed to grow more worms. So there's a lot of baby worms in here. I always overfeed this bed, but these will be amazingly happy and healthy, and they'll continue to breed. And as long as there's food for them to eat, they'll stay here. They'll stay in this bed and just reproduce like mad. So now we're going to go to the next layer. We're just going to do a layer of leaves basically to cover it, keep it moist so the worms don't dry out in the sun. here we have our final layer on the top of our garden bed, which is hay. If you wanted to go even further, a really excellent thing to do, which I do most of the time, is add a layer on top of this. That layer is going to be an additional layer of cardboard or newspaper. Newspaper works great. Most newspaper is made with vegetable dyes, so it breaks down perfectly. If you use newspaper, you're going to want at least 2 to 4 sheets thick, or cardboard. For the top layer, I would make a thinner layer, just maybe one layer of cardboard would be enough. What that does is it seals in all the moisture. Right now in Florida, we haven't had a substantial rain in 3 or 4 weeks, so everything's pretty dry. So I should do that top layer, but this is in an area where it receives some spray from irrigation. It's not drip irrigation, so I know it's going to get wet every 3 or 4 days whenever I irrigate. So I'm going to do something a little different. Instead of waiting for this to break down and planting it next season, the great thing about layered or lasagna gardens is you can plant in them right away. Not only am I going to plant in it right away, what I'm going to plant is nitrogen fixers, and they're going to send their roots down. They're going to look for the nutrients, and when they find it, they're going to break it down. They're going to aerate as their roots dig through all of our layers, and they're going to help break this down even quicker and make it more successful. So basically, what you do to plant in it at this point is you just make a hole. You go through as many layers as you can get through with your hole, and then you fill that hole with compost and decent soil, and that hole goes all the way down. I'm touching logs down there. So I'm going to fill this hole with some good soil that I've already got ready to go, and then I'm going to plant nitrogen fixers on top of it. But if you wanted to plant a tomato, you could plant a tomato right here. It would do just as good, or actually probably much better than if you had it in a container. All right, so I got my holes prepared. It's ready to actually plant something, and this is what we're going to be planting today. We got some basil. Basil's just awesome. It does do a little bit of pest prevention for sure, especially when you plant it near tomatoes. We got some Mucuna pruriens, which is a velvet bean. This stuff is one of the greatest plants that you can put in your soil to build soil. And then we also have pigeon peas. The pigeon peas, some of them I soaked for about 3 days and they already sprouted. Pigeon peas are awesome for building soil. Pigeon peas and velvet bean, both nitrogen fixers. And then we're also going to plant this, which is not a nitrogen fixer. It's actually a little late in the season to plant tomatoes, but somebody gave me these and told me that this was a special variety of tomato that produces hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So we're gonna try and plant that. The way we do tomatoes is we try to keep some native soil with it, but then we actually plant it real deep. This is one of the only plants you really want to do this with, and then you build the soil up all the way around the stem of the plant. The idea being that this whole stem is going to send roots out. There's going to be a lot more roots. It's going to be a much more stable plant. It's going to have a lot more access to nutrients in the soil because of that. So now that we got our tomato in, we're going to scatter some basil seeds kind of wherever. We're going to press them in. And if they grow, awesome. If they don't, well, that's okay too. So here we have some velvet bean pods. And the way that you plant velvet beans is you take the pod, you take some soil, and you're done. Just cover it with about an inch and a half of soil. And as long as there's moisture, every single one of the beans in there is going to sprout. Their germination rate is 100%. They're a very aggressive growing plant, one of the fastest plants you can grow. The velvet bean that I grow is a special variety that doesn't have stinging hairs. Velvet beans are indigenous to Florida. You can find them on empty lots and at the edges of forests, but they're covered with little tiny hairs that if they touch any part of your skin, they make you itch It earned it the nickname Madness Bean. So you can use those, just be careful, wear gloves when you harvest them, or find a variety that's an itchless variety like the one that we grow here at Zero Cost Gardening. So velvet beans are actually such aggressive growers, and one thing that we can do with these is we can take these seeds, and these seeds, some of these are from this season, they're just a couple months old after they're dry. But some of these are actually a year old. They're from last season. But we could take these seeds and put them down right straight into the hay. Doesn't need any soil. As long as it gets moisture, it will grow. So thank you so much for joining us today on Zero Cost Gardening. I'm Sharky Mahalo. This is Fiona the Farm Pup. This is our urban farm. If you liked our video, please click like. Please click the bell. You'll get notifications when we put out other videos, which we're definitely going to do. If you don't click like and subscribe, you're going to make this puppy very sad, and she might cry. Will you cry, Fiona? Will you cry? She's going to cry. Don't make a puppy cry. Anyway, check us out on Facebook, Instagram. Just look for Zero Cost Gardening, and we hope you're spending time in your garden as well. Have a good one.